people gathered to honor the life of Detective Tanisha Pughsley at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Pughsley worked as a detective with the Montgomery Police Department for 4 years before she was fatally shot by her ex-boyfriend in 2020. The ceremony was held by Alabama State University and the Leadership Montgomery Torchbearers. Organizers in the family of the Detective Pughsley say they want to bring awareness to domestic violence and show people how to recognize the signs of abuse in their loved ones.
July 6, 2020, Montgomery, Alabama. It's 2:15 in the morning. A 911 call comes in. A shooting reported at a home on Overview Drive in the Park Lake neighborhood. Police and fire medics rush to the scene. When they arrive, they realize almost immediately this is not a routine call. Inside the home, they find 27-year-old Detective Tanisha Pughsley. She has suffered fatal injuries. Despite immediate medical attention, she's pronounced dead at the scene. And very quickly, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't a case gone wrong. This wasn't an officer killed in the line of duty. Detective Pughsley was off duty. She was at home. And the person responsible was someone she knew well, her ex-boyfriend, 24-year-old Brandon Webster. What makes this case especially difficult isn't only that a police officer was killed, it's that Tanisha had done everything right. She recognized the warning signs. She documented the abuse. She went through the proper channels. She filed for protective order, and the court granted it. She was careful. She understood the system. She worked inside it every single day. And yet, just 17 days after that protective order was issued, she was dead. By the time the sun rose on July 6th, black wreaths were being placed on the doors of Montgomery Police Headquarters. The mayor ordered all city flags lowered to half-staff. More than 100 officers would gather in the days that followed to mourn one of their own. But this case did more than bring grief. It forced Montgomery and communities across the country to ask difficult questions. If a trained detective, someone who knew exactly how to navigate the legal system, couldn't be protected by a court order, what does that mean for everyone else? Where are the gaps in our protective systems? And most importantly, what needs to change? This is the story of Detective Tanisha Pughsley, a woman who dedicated her life to protecting others, a woman who understood the law and used every tool available to protect herself, and a woman whose death revealed critical flaws in how we respond to domestic violence. Tanisha Pughsley's story begins in Chicago, Illinois. To her family and close friends, she was known as Tukey, a nickname that followed her through life and one that would later become closely tied to her legacy. In 2011, Tanisha left Chicago and headed south to Montgomery, Alabama. She enrolled at Alabama State University, joining as a freshman that fall. She became part of the school's bowling team while pursuing a degree in criminal justice. The 2011 to 2012 bowling roster lists her hometown as Chicago. It's a small detail, but it marks the beginning of a journey she took seriously. Tanisha graduated in 2014, degree in hand. For her, this wasn't just about a diploma. She had a clear vision. She wanted to serve her community. She wanted to make a difference, and she wanted to do it in law enforcement. In 2016, she made that vision real. At just 23 years old, Tanisha joined the Montgomery Police Department. What followed was a 4-year career defined by discipline and purpose. Those who worked with her say she took to the job immediately. She was professional, dedicated, thorough, the kind of officer who didn't cut corners. But Tanisha's commitment went beyond her badge. In her free time, she volunteered with Transformation Montgomery, a faith-based nonprofit focused on community development. Their mission was simple but ambitious: renew neighborhoods, support families, invest in children. Tanisha worked with their pre-K program. She served lunches. She showed up. She became a familiar face in the very neighborhoods she patrolled as an officer. Children knew her. They watched at her. They looked up to her. For many of them, seeing someone who looked like them wearing a badge meant something. It meant possibility. Dolores Burrell, an adult minister with Transformation Montgomery, would later say this about Tanisha: She was more than just an officer. Off duty and on duty, she had a servitude heart. When she came here, she wasn't just an officer, she was a mentor. The children's minister, Debbie Peavy, remembered her as tough but full of class. She said Tanisha's beauty shined from the inside out. That kind of impact doesn't happen by accident. It comes from consistency, from care, from showing up. Tanisha also mentored young girls at the Sequel Group home in Montgomery. She believed in representation, in being present, in letting young people see what was possible. By 2020, Detective Pusley had spent 4 years with the Montgomery Police Department. She had built a reputation as reliable and hardworking, but she wasn't finished. Tanisha had bigger plans. She wanted to work for the FBI. Just 4 days before her death, she sent an email to her mother. She had made it to the final round of interviews. The position was hers, pending a background check. Everything she had worked for was lining up. Her career was about to take its next major step. In her personal life, Tanisha was close with her family. Her brother, DeAndre Jenkins, would later say she changed the direction of his life. While he was incarcerated and welcoming his first child, Tanisha told him something simple: remember this feeling and do better. He listened. Years later, he would dedicate his cooking career to her memory, planning to name his future restaurant after his sister. Tanisha had an emotional support dog named Jay. She loved karaoke nights, bowling, time with friends. She was especially close with her friend, Kirby Tolles, who described her as vibrant, loyal, and stubborn in the best way. To everyone who knew her, Tanisha was someone special. She was building a career. She was serving her community. She had plans for the future. But behind all of that, there was something else. Something far more common than most people realize. Tanisha was in a relationship that had become dangerous. A relationship with a man named Brandon Webster. They had been together, they had lived together, they even co-owned a home on Overview Drive. At some point, the relationship changed. Exactly when isn't fully documented. But by the spring of 2020, one thing is clear: Tanisha knew she was in danger. And this is where her story takes a critical turn, because Tanisha didn't ignore the warning signs. She didn't minimize them. She didn't wait. She acted. She did exactly what experts tell victims to do. She documented everything. She kept records. She built her case. And she went to court to ask for protection. May 20th, 2020. This is the date of an incident Tanisha would later document in court filings. According to those records, on that day, Brandon Webster struck her twice on the side of her head with an open hand. What makes this moment especially serious is what Tanisha was doing at the time. She was holding her 5-month-old godchild. The force of the assault caused her to lose her grip on the infant. Pause on that. Tanisha was caring for a baby, someone else's child, a child trusted to her protection, and her partner attacked her while she was holding that infant. This wasn't just violence against Tanisha. It was reckless endangerment of a child. For many victims, this would be a breaking point. For Tanisha, who worked in law enforcement and understood escalation, it was something else. It was proof that the situation was dangerous and getting worse. 2 days later, on May 22nd, 2020, Tanisha filed for a protective order against Brandon Webster. The document she submitted was detailed, specific. This wasn't a vague accusation. It was a carefully constructed account from someone who knew exactly what the court needed. In her filing, Tanisha described the May 20th incident involving the infant. She wrote, "His actions caused me to drop the infant." But that wasn't all. Tanisha outlined a clear pattern of behavior. Although Brandon had moved out of their shared home, he continued to show up unannounced. And each time there was violence. The assaults were ongoing. She documented his harassment campaign, threatening text messages, and when she blocked his number, he didn't stop. He switched to private numbers so she couldn't screen the calls. Tanisha told the court that Webster had stolen from her. She stated that he had threatened to confine or injure her. She described being stalked. She reported being physically restrained. This was not a he said, she said situation. Tanisha built a case, she showed a pattern, she demonstrated escalation, she provided the kind of evidence courts rely on to assess danger, and then she made one more request. A request that, in hindsight, might have saved her life. She asked the court to require Brandon Webster to surrender all firearms. This wasn't unusual. In domestic violence cases, removing weapons is one of the most critical safety measures available. Research consistently shows that the presence of a firearm makes a victim 5 times more likely to be killed. Tanisha knew this. She worked in law enforcement. She understood the risk. That's why she asked for that provision. The court reviewed her petition. On June 19, 2020, nearly a month later, a judge granted the protective order. The order prohibited Brandon Webster from contacting Tanisha. It barred him from harassing, stalking, or threatening her. It prohibited him from going to the house on Overview Drive, even though he was a co-owner of the property. It also barred him from going to her workplace. The order was set to remain in effect until December 2020, 6 months of legal protection. But there was a critical gap. Despite Tanisha's explicit request, the judge did not require Brandon Webster to surrender any firearms. We need to pause here and understand what that means. After Tanisha's death, police searched Webster's apartment and his vehicle. They found AR-15 magazines compatible with the rifle used in the shooting. The investigation confirmed that Webster had access to an AR-style rifle throughout the period the protective order was active. This is not about blaming any single judge. Protective orders vary by jurisdiction, by case. Judges have discretion. And in 2020, many states did not yet have strong firearm removal laws in domestic violence cases. But this case exposes a dangerous gap. When someone shows violence, documents threats, demonstrates escalation, and a court agrees they are dangerous enough to warrant a protective order, why wouldn't we remove their access to lethal weapons? Think about it. If someone is considered too dangerous to send a text message or drive past a house, why would we trust them with a rifle? Tanisha had that order in hand. She was being careful. She knew Brandon was prohibited from contacting her or coming near her home. On paper, she was protected. Days passed. June turned into early July. Tanisha continued working as a detective. She continued volunteering. She was moving forward with her life. And she had begun seeing someone new. Another Montgomery police officer, Jeremy Walker. They had met in 2019 through a mutual friend, Officer Michael Westbrook. In the spring of 2020, they started talking. By early July, they were dating. On July 5th, 2020, Tanisha and Jeremy went on a date. They drove to Birmingham, about 90 miles away. They spent the evening together. After 1 a.m, they returned to Montgomery and went back to Tanisha's home on Overview Drive. It had been 17 days since the protective order was issued, 17 days since Brandon Webster was legally ordered to stay away. But protective orders are pieces of paper. They rely on compliance and enforcement. They don't create physical barriers, they don't lock doors, and they don't stop someone who has already shown they don't respect boundaries or consequences. Brandon Webster knew about the order. When police later searched his apartment, they found a copy of it in the top drawer of his dresser. He knew exactly what he wasn't supposed to do. And in the early morning hours of July 6th, 2020, he chose to violate that order in the worst possible way. The exact timeline isn't completely clear, but through court testimony and official records, we know what happened that morning. At some point, Brandon Webster learned that Tanisha was home with another man. How he got that information isn't specified in public records. Whether he was watching the house or learned it another way is unknown. What matters is what he decided to do next. Despite a court-issued protective order explicitly prohibiting him from being there, Webster went to the house, and he didn't come empty-handed. He brought an AR-style rifle. According to trial testimony, Webster entered the house through the back door. The alarm system activated. But inside the house, Tanisha and Jeremy didn't immediately understand what was happening. By the time they realized, Webster was already inside. He was armed, he was angry, and he opened fire. Jeremy Walker later testified about what happened next. He described a physical struggle over the rifle. The two men fought. At one point, Jeremy managed to gain control of the weapon. He threw it into the bathroom. Tanisha told him to run. She told him to get out. Jeremy fled through the front door. He was wearing only his underwear. He left behind his clothes, his phone, and his car keys. He ran through the neighborhood, knocking on doors. 3, maybe 5. No one answered. After leaving the house, Jeremy said he didn't hear any more gunshots. He kept running, nearly 3 miles, all the way to the home of his friend Michael Westbrook. Westbrook wasn't home, but his doorbell camera was recording. It captured Jeremy, sweating, panicked, clearly in distress, trying to get help. Back at the house on Overview Drive, after Jeremy escaped, something happened that we know only from physical evidence. Brandon Webster shot Tanisha Pughsley. She suffered fatal injuries. At approximately 2:11 a.m., a 911 call was made. The caller identified himself as Rodney. He told the dispatcher that someone had called him to say there had been a shooting at a house on Overview Drive. He said he wasn't there. He said he didn't know exactly what happened, but he mentioned that his ex-wife might have been involved. Police traced the call. The phone number belonged to Brandon Webster. It was registered to his apartment at Saddleback Ridge. Police and fire medics arrived at the scene at 2:29 a.m. The back door was open. As officers approached, they could hear the burglar alarm. Officer David Stewart was among the first on scene. His body camera recorded what they found. They located Tanisha in the master bedroom. They attempted life-saving measures, but there was nothing they could do. Detective Tanisha Pughsley was pronounced dead at the scene. Brandon Webster was gone. He had fled. But police already knew who they were looking for. They had Jeremy Walker's testimony. They had the 911 call made from Webster's phone. They had the protective order proving Webster was legally prohibited from being there. The U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force took over the search. It didn't take long. Within hours, Brandon Webster was in custody. He was transported to the Montgomery County Detention Facility. He was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The capital murder charges were enhanced. 1 count for killing someone during the commission of a burglary. The second for killing someone while violating a court-issued protective order. That second charge is significant. Under Alabama law, murder committed in violation of a protective order is considered one of the most serious crimes. The Montgomery Police Department and the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office began building their case against Brandon Webster immediately. This wasn't a mystery. They had a survivor witness, they had physical evidence, they had the protective order, and they had Webster's own 911 call. But justice moved slowly. Webster was indicted on February 13th, 2022, nearly 2 years after Tanisha was killed. The charges were unchanged. 2 counts of capital murder, and 1 count of attempted first-degree assault. The trial finally began on August 15th, 2023, more than 3 years after Tanisha's death. Montgomery County District Attorney Darrell Bailey prosecuted the case personally. This wasn't just another trial. Tanisha was one of their own, a member of the law enforcement community killed by someone the system was supposed to restrain. The evidence presented was direct and overwhelming. Prosecutors introduced text messages and email exchanges between Tanisha and Webster, messages showing aggression, threats, escalating behavior. Officer Jeremy Walker testified about that night, about the struggle, about running for his life. The protective order was entered into evidence, the same order found later in Webster's dresser drawer, proof that he knew exactly what he was violating. Investigators testified about searching Webster's apartment and his vehicle. They found AR-15 magazines on top of his dresser, more magazines in the trunk of his car. They found Tanisha's police badge inside his vehicle. Forensic experts testified that the shell casing recovered at the scene was compatible with those magazines. Security camera footage was also shown to the jury. One camera captured Jeremy Walker fleeing the neighborhood. Another documented traffic movement during the critical time window. The picture was clear. Still, Brandon Webster took the stand in his own defense. He claimed the shooting was accidental. He said it happened during the struggle over the rifle. He tried to raise doubt about the exact timing, about whether the fatal shot came before or after Jeremy escaped. The jury didn't believe him. On August 22nd, 2023, they returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. 2 counts of capital murder under Alabama Code, Section 13A540. 1 count for killing someone during the commission of a burglary. 1 count for killing someone while violating a protective order. And guilty of attempted first-degree assault against Jeremy Walker. Judge J.R. Gaines sentenced Webster immediately. Life in prison without the possibility of parole on each capital murder count, to be served concurrently. An additional 10 years for the attempted assault. At 28 years old, Brandon Webster will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He will never be eligible for parole. After sentencing, District Attorney Darrell Bailey released a statement. He said this case was particularly important to me because the victim was a beloved member of our law enforcement community. Detective Pusley was committed to helping our citizens on and off duty, especially our children. She left an indelible mark on all who knew her and accomplished so much during her 4 years on the police force. It is tragic that her life, one filled with promise, was so senselessly and violently cut short. I pray her family can find peace knowing that Brandon Webster will spend the rest of his life behind bars with zero possibility of ever getting out. Justice was served in a legal sense. The man responsible will never be free again. But justice doesn't bring Tanisha back, and it doesn't answer the bigger questions this case forces us to ask. So let's talk about what we can learn. Let's talk about the bigger picture. First, protective orders. They are essential tools. They create a legal record of abuse and threats. They give law enforcement clear authority to intervene. They send a message that the behavior is unacceptable. But they also have limits. A piece of paper cannot physically stop someone from showing up. It doesn't create a barrier. It works only when the order is respected or enforced quickly enough. The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is often right after they leave or take legal action. And that's when violence often escalates. Second, firearms. The research here is consistent. When a firearm is present in a domestic violence situation, the risk of death increases by about 500%. That's not a small increase. Federal law restricts firearm ownership after certain convictions. Many states allow courts to order weapons surrender as part of protective orders, but the laws vary, the enforcement varies, and gaps remain. In Tanisha's case, she specifically asked for Webster to surrender his weapons. She understood the risk. The court granted the protective order, but not that provision. At the dedication ceremony, Dr. Sharon Pusley said this: "It is my hope and desire that the Peace Garden will serve as a lasting tribute to Tanisha's legacy of love and service, and a symbol of resilience for the entire community to do all it can to stop the violence that took my daughter away from us." Every plant was donated, every hour of labor volunteered, a community coming together to remember. These memorials aren't just about the past, they create space for conversation. They remind people that domestic violence is real and preventable. Tanisha's brother, Dondre Jenkins, has dedicated his cooking career to her memory. He plans to name his future restaurant after his sister, a promise made permanent. Moments matter. They tell families their loved ones mattered. They tell victims they are seen. And they tell communities that this issue demands attention. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, help is available. In Montgomery, you can contact One Place Family Justice Center at 334-2627-378. The Alabama Domestic Violence 24-hour crisis hotline at 1-800-65-06522. Nationally, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-79-97233. They provide confidential support, safety planning, and local resources. You can also learn more about Tuki's Voice and their work at tukisvoice.org. Detective Tanisha Pughsley did everything right. She recognized the danger, she documented it, she asked for help, and still the system failed her. But her legacy is forcing us to do better, to close the gaps, to remove weapons from dangerous situations, to listen, to act. Tanisha was only 27 years old. But as one community leader said, her time here was short, yet her impact will be long-lasting. And if stories like Tanisha's matter to you, if you believe these conversations need space, context, and care, then stay with this channel. Subscribe.